All right, everyone, and welcome to one more episode of Talking Points with Capstone. For those of you joining in for the first time, I'm Dr. Sujaya Banerjee, and I lead the Capstone organization. And for those of you who don't know about Capstone, Capstone is a leading organizational development and leadership capability building firm. We work with marquee clients across India, Southeast Asia, the UK, EU, South Africa, and the United States. We have clients all over the world. I work very closely with Duke Corporate Education, additionally, to be able to work with their clients across the globe. And most of our work is in the area of, like I mentioned, change, leadership capability, culture change, and increasingly, we've been working with organizations post mergers and acquisitions to enable cultural integration. We just got listed as one of the leading, organizations for innovation by Forbes, and I got listed recently as one of the most influential business leaders for 2026. So, we've been having a great year and we're very excited with the theme that we're presenting to you here today, which cannot not be relevant to practically anyone who's existing in 2026. So, this is a very, very topical and, very palpably important theme for us to be able to talk about, which is basically around change and disruption that has touched every single person, not just in the business world, but practically everywhere, anywhere in the world. And so, what we're going to try and do during the course of the conversation today, and to join me is we've invited Dr. Aravind Chinchure to this time's Talking Points. We couldn't have invited someone more learned than this to be able to come in and have this conversation with us here. And so, welcome, Arvind. We're very excited to have you here. And Arvind's the founder and CEO of QLEAP Academy. He's a academic. He's a scientist. He's been the founder of QLEAP. Has a PhD. Is a like I said, a scientist. He's an author, board member, and Industry 4.0 advisor. He's a very prominent author and teaches across the globe. I'm very excited to have and very privileged today to be able to have this conversation with you, Arvind. So thank you for agreeing to be able to join us here. I want you all to be able to keep the chat going. Everyone who's joining in here today, I'm sure this is a palpably, like I said, relevant and something that you're experiencing every single day as you navigate through your careers, particularly in the business world. So I'm going to ask you to be able to keep yourself ready to be able to ask questions, but to also share perspectives as we go along. Because what we're going to try and discover today is how do you leverage change and disruption as a competitive advantage? So let's just all be very brutally honest for a second. If you're a professional, if you're in the professional world right now, you're probably exhausted by the word unprecedented. We've been told to be resilient so many times over the last few years that resilience has stopped feeling like a competitive edge and started feeling like a baseline cost of entry. Most organizations treat disruptions like a storm to be weathered. They batten down the hatches, cut costs, wait for the skies to clear. And while they're busy waiting, they lose market share, they lose some of their best talent, and also they might start or begin to lose their own relevance. The companies that win and the ones that truly dominate don't just manage change, they weaponize it. They treat volatility as a raw material and they mold it into a product that their competitors cannot basically replicate. Now, think about it. When the rules of the game shift mid play, who wins? Yeah, it's never the team that plays the old rules perfectly. It's the team that reads the new rule book faster than anyone else and finds the loopholes before the ink is dry. And so today we're attempting to tear up the playbook on change management and start getting everyone to view that differently. And we aren't just here to talk about coping mechanisms or stress tolerance. We're also here to talk about offensive strategy, right? What we're going to do over the next couple of minutes is try and explore how to flip your organization mindset from risk averse to opportunity obsessed, we also want to try and look at, and I'm hoping that there'll be some comments and also some questions around how do you restructure your workflow so that disruption actually energizes your teams instead of paralyzing it? And most critically, how do you spot the asymmetrical advantages that appear in chaos, and the ones that move your competitors, and the moves that your competitors are too scared to make, those that you can capitalize on immediately? So here is a first question, and we want you to be able to drop a yes in the comment box. Yeah, if you have ever watched your leadership team freeze during a major market shift instead of accelerating the change. Have you ever watched your leadership team freeze during a major market shift instead of accelerating the change? So let's see who in the room with us, who's in the room with us today, because the conversation for all of us starts now, and you need to be very actively, I'm hoping, contribute to the conversation. This is contextually relevant for, I believe, absolutely anybody and everybody. So welcome everyone. What we're talking about today is leveraging change and disruption as a competitive advantage. So let's get to work, and with that I'm going to invite Aravind Chinchure. You can stop sharing the deck, get both of us on the screen. And Arvind, I'm going to call you in. Like I said, this is going to be a conversation and a discussion, but we'll try and use a question to be able to start that off, right? So, how
Yes,
can
please.
leaders rewire their thinking to stop seeing chaos as a threat and to start seeing it as a starting point for reinvention? And I know all of this is easier said than done, but how do you stop seeing chaos as threat and start treating it as a starting point for reinvention? So I'm going to ask you to go first, and maybe I'll keep adding on as you go on to share your perspectives. And I'm hoping you're going to all keep the chat active with questions. Yeah, go ahead, Arvind.
Yes, thank you very much. This is such a honor and privilege to be part of this podcast, Sujaya. Let me first commend you because it's extremely important for the community today is to have a discourse, dialogue, debate on contemporary topics. And you taking that lead and making that happen is something which is commendable, and I
Thank you.
appreciate all your efforts.
Thank
So
you.
I thank you, all the listeners. I'm sure by at the end of this particular episode, you will have a lot of deeper insights from both from my lived experiences and Sujaya's experiences. And I'm, of course, for those who are listening, recorded, they will also have something to take away. So this is a very interesting question that has been always said, right? Threat and opportunity, chaos, and reinvention. Uh, but where exactly is the opportunity for a reinvention? Sometimes we can think this as a positive thing, right? Thinking positively. Look at chaos and look at an opportunity. Sometimes it looks like let's think positively, but it's not just thinking positively, right? Where exactly, what are those things that shift within the organization when there is a crisis, when there is a chaos? So fundamentally, these are the two things that you cannot manufacture during good times. The first point or first thing is for reinvention is it compresses the time, the first thing. The second is it lowers the resistance for change. And these two things are generally uh, does not happen during the good times. The chaos, the crisis compresses the time and lowers the resistance to change. What does this mean? Say, for example, an organization in good times need to take certain actions. Perhaps it will take 5 years, the committees, the quiet politics that exist within
Mm,
the organization,
mm,
to bring that change, right?
mm,
And there is always a resistance because we are doing so well, our quarterly results are so good. Why we
mm,
need to change that thing? And now this crisis, this disruption will give you that permission or allow you to leverage this to take quicker decisions, faster decisions, and the leadership and the people, within the organization know know that there is no other way to change, because change is the only way. And that's the two things that will lead to create this potential to reinvent and reimagine and create that opportunity. So let me give you an example. What does this mean? For example, we know a company called Merck's, which is one of the most, every container ship that we see, there is a, logistical, whenever you see
Yes.
a truck. So there is this logo. Now, Merck's had planned and they knew that they need to be protected from cyber attacks. And this plan remained for 5 years, literally 5 years, because for a because it was not a job for someone within that quarter deliverables, right? Nobody
Yeah.
was at that. It was not a deliverable during the quarter. And right after 5 years, when the plan existed, the cyber attack happens. And within such a short time, the whole organization changes, and they bring outsiders, the internal talent come together, and they ensure that this gets implemented. So that's the power. I will give one other example and then I can stop, then we can go. Let's look at
Yes.
Fujifilm, right? It's a camera and films, like Kodak. Fujifilm was known, and we grown up seeing this.
Yeah.
Now when digital came, Fujifilm had a very profitable film business like Kodak.
Yeah.
But when there was a profitable quarterly revenues that were coming out of film, and here is
Yeah.
a leader, Komori, who was leading Fujifilm, said that digital is coming, we need to take extraordinary decisions. And he said he actually started dismantling profitable business, film business, and started looking at other opportunities. And the entire organization did not resist for that change, right? Just imagine a profitable business and your revenues, because the salaries of the employees depend on those,
Yeah.
those revenues. And here is a leader, he says, look, the shift, the change is coming, digital is coming, we need to reinvent. And
Yeah.
what happened, that reinvention today, is because the time to take decision compressed and there was no resistance to change. And that's the two levers for a converting, chaos into reinvention. Let me
Right.
stop. So
Right. So
what reveals is, yeah.
yeah. Yeah. No, no, no. Go ahead. I
See,
mean, make your
yeah.
point, and then I'll come up with. I'll add on with
So
some comments.
so what I see, Sujaya, is when crisis happens, what is revealed within the organization is not a character, but the kind of an architecture that exists. So you get exposed. Are
Yeah.
you, or did you have that structures before this crisis happened, and you are able to take those actions?
So both your examples are very interesting, because you have the Musk example where you say that they had strategically decided to be able to build a mechanism or walls for cyber attacks, and they basically conceptually knew that they needed it, but they didn't get down to the urgency of being able to address it to such time
Yes.
as it was inevitable to now do something sort of about it. And at which time, so you're saying that reinvention can be the outcome of having your back against the wall, which is it's inevitable, where you really have to finally do it. So it can easily be something that you had in the pipeline, was something you were aware of, but you had too much inertia, or there weren't systems and processes, or it didn't, like you said, it wasn't on anyone's table. It
Exactly.
wasn't a goal for anyone. So no one was accountable for it, as a result of which,
Yep.
despite knowing it was a priority, no one had acted on it. And then when it became inevitable, they did what was required to reinvent. And the other example is of someone proactively doing this, which is saying that
Yes.
I can see that technology is inevitable. It's something that we're going to have to keep up with. So we reinvent in advance. We reinvent in time,
Yes.
right? And I think that while we have both these examples about being proactive and reactive to change, the truth is that for most organization, it comes upon them. It comes They
Yes.
experience it when it's already upon them. And I think it's very, very important to complete this part of our conversation by being able to add, what do you do when change is inevitable? What do you do when it's on your doorstep? For example, it's not uncommon at all for organizations to start experiencing huge pain and challenge in being able to attract and retain talent, and they're not losing those talent to other large players. They're losing those talent to unknown, smaller, more lit, more agile organizations. They're not losing business to large players or usual competitors. They're losing their business to small players, and I think it's very astounding. It's something they've not been prepared for. They don't
Yes.
understand what's the reason for the transition other than cost optimization, whereas it could be a lot more. It often is a lot more, which you don't want to admit to. And you're kind of surprised that you're losing your business to people who are not known. And that you're losing your talent to unknown organizations. And it gets you to want to sit back and completely rethink everything, because none of this makes sense. It's not what you've been used to. You normally believe that people move from one big brand to another brand, that a large bank out of the UK is not
Hmm.
going to pass on their business to a small group of young Gen Zs who've set up a business together, and that you're this large, sort of monolithic kind of organization. You're multinational. You exist across. You're very celebrated for the quality of what you're offering. You pride yourself on being able to retain your clients for years on end, and suddenly you're losing them away to people. So I'm just calling out all kinds of chaos that can start unfolding, and we're not yet prepared for it. And I want to draw the attention of the people who've joined us to be able to view this conversation today, or even those who are going to be listening to the recorded version, to basically the work of John Keats, right?
Hmm.
He's a poet, right? And talks about a concept called negative capability, right?
Interesting.
He
Yeah.
talks about the joy of being in complexity, staying in complexity, staying with the pain, staying with wanting to decipher and understand things rather than want to act. Because one of the things that we're used to in the business world is that anything that goes wrong, we got to quickly show some action, right? I mean, normally people are saying, so what are you guys doing about it? If there is a crisis or chaos, the first thing you want to ask the manager is, so what are you guys doing about this? I mean, I hope you all have done something about it. And there's a lot of sort of effort made to be able to talk about the actions we're already taking, the actions we're about to take. There are these things which we're about to do. So basically, the vibe is that we've got this. You know what I mean? We're doing what we have to about this crisis, and that we have the competence to be able to manage this. And Keats is asking or inviting exactly the opposite, which is,
Yes.
can you just draw back and not do anything for a bit, right? And to have the wisdom to understand that you're not going to be able to decipher a complexity on the go. In the sense, you're not going to know what the solutions are straight away, right? You got to be able to pause a bit. And there is
Yes.
huge value of that pause, which is to stay to understand. And Keats is saying this in the context of the complexities of the heart. For example, if you're heartbroken, you kind of stay in the heartbreak to be able to experience it for a bit before you know what you want to do about it. And so it's pretty much the same. It's all the negative emotions, and it could be surprise, it could be shame, it could be embarrassment, it could be loss of face. It could be so many things when there's chaos and you're beginning to lose business, you're beginning to, you have failures that you're experiencing on the job and you didn't expect them. So it's very, very, very difficult to hold yourself back, right? It's counterintuitive. And I think the first thing I want to talk about is the power of being able to bring in pause, especially when there's chaos,
Mm.
right? To be able to kind
Yes.
of get your head in order, to be able to get your act in order, and to be able to let people know, the powers to be, that please give us some time to be able to decipher this. There's huge value in that. Huge, huge value. In fact, I think across the board, if people understood the value of the space between stimulus and response, because it's going to get you to be able to curate and to be able to put together the best possible action that you need to be able to counter the chaos that you've just sort of experienced. So I wanted to call out, negative capability as an important way of being able to deal with unexpected chaos. I think related to that, in fact, the act of being able to bring in pause is basically your ability to be emotionally agile. right? Your ability to be able to experience negative emotion, whether it's fear, pain, regret. For example, I'm sure the people who already knew of the cyber attacks and were supposed to work on it, when it really did happen, you have pain, you have regret, you have fear, you have loss of face, you have embarrassment. All of that as a professional, right? So the idea being emotional agility, and these, I'm driving this, alongside with your comments, to be able to bring in the fact that oftentimes in a crisis, the soft stuff is the hard stuff, right? The soft stuff is the hard stuff. And I'm trying to drive home the point on emotional agility, that your negative emotions is going to be a part of the deal when we are dealing with unprecedented change in the environment. Yeah, so feeling sad, bad, angry, all of that's going to happen. A lot of it is fear, especially when it's already upon you and you weren't really prepared for it, and you don't know how much the destruction is going to be and whether you're going to be able to resolve matters. It's not uncommon to experience fear, for example. And so fear, when you're experiencing fear, the idea is to be able to ask yourself, what do you need to demonstrate as a leader when you're experiencing negative emotion? What is it that people around you expect of you as a value, especially as a leadership value, when things are going amiss and things are going wrong? And perhaps what they're expecting from you is courage. Now you look at fear and you look at courage, there are two ends of the spectrum, right? Yeah, and they can coexist. They can coexist by virtue of being able to be in touch with your fear while you raise yourself to the value that you want to demonstrate in the moment as a leader. So, emotional agility, what we're describing commonly as resilience, is your ability to deal with negative emotions. And I believe, from what we're seeing and the case studies and the use cases that are emerging from a whole host of organizations that we're dealing with, is that the organization that knows how to bring pause, right, so that they're able to basically assimilate the right kind of action and reaction, are more likely to be able to succeed, survive, and basically use disruption meaningfully. Use the disruption. You know what I mean? Shakespeare said, "Sweet are the uses of adversity, not the adversity its uses." So the idea of this conversation today is to not let go of a crisis, is really truly to not let go of a crisis. And that how well are we using that? And it is possible, by the way, to experience negative emotion, but to rise to something that you need to be able to hold up to as a leader. So I'm going to leave you with these two ideas. And, I think, Arvind, I think we have a bit of a freeze there at your end. Is this electricity fluctuation? Is somebody going to reach out to Arvind and see whether he can join back? Okay, everyone on this LinkedIn Live conversation, just give us a couple of seconds to bring Arvind back. And, he was very much enjoying the conversation. We want him to come in to be able to share his perspective on what I just said right now. So, interesting that we experience a disruption when we were just talking about one. So, lo and behold, you talk about a disruption and you experience one, right? Those are the times that we're actually existing in at this time. So, are there questions from the audience? Are there comments from the audience? So, Suneet and Gaurav, if you can share some of these, maybe we can try responding to some of them. So, would be good to hear on some perspectives on how does one actually manage to think about known unknown without crystal ball gazing. Yeah, I think that it's a good question to present to Arvind at this time, and be great to know why. Be interesting to know what is the context in which you're asking this question. Yeah, it would be good to hear on some perspective on how does one actually manage to think about known unknown without crystal ball gazing. And even while Arvind's coming in on board, I'll try and augment that response by saying that, look, scenario planning is such a great way of being able to start thinking about scenarios that have not yet happened, right? And so things don't just come upon you. You've already imagined some of them happening. I think having a really keen ear to the ground on what's going on with competition and what challenges is competition already experiencing is also another great way to be able to go about it. I don't know if you've heard about pre-mortems. So rather than post-mortems, pre-mortems are great ways of creating discipline within the organization. To Arvind, I'm trying to respond to the question that someone's asked, right? And the question is, would be good to hear on some perspectives on how does one actually manage to think about known unknown without crystal ball gazing, right? And so my response has been that, basically, I'm inviting them to be able to adopt scenario planning as part of the way in which you kind of look at your business, which is look at alternatives, look at the way in which, if this happened, what would we do? If that happened, what would we do? That's what we really mean by scenario planning. But to be able to look at different aspects of the business and to be able to imagine scenarios, right? A pre-mortem is kind of similar, but not entirely, because a pre-mortem is to be able to look at a potential challenge that we think is around the corner and act like if it had already unfolded, what are the 4 or 5 things we'll need to really quickly do, right? And so pre-mortems is such a great way to be able to bring reality to perhaps something that can be, can unexpectedly spring up, but you make it less unexpected by being able to work on pre-mortems. You can also do pre-mortems on losing significant talent within the organization. Or if you're hiring somebody in a very significant role, you can do a pre-mortem together on, let's say it's 6 months later and this person has miserably failed, right? What would have caused his failure? Or what could have been things that we can already see around the corner, which is the reason why this person may not succeed. So I think thinking like that, like a bit of a futurist, is going to help you tremendously in terms of being able to not be surprised with what just came along. So I'll pause here and bring you in, Arvind. Yeah, the question is no crystal ball gazing, but more of being able to really not be so surprised when things happen. So how do we kind of unexpected, expected, how do we kind of manage around that? Okay, I think you're on mute.
So can you hear?
Yeah, now we can. Yes.
This is good.
Okay.
So
Yes, we can.
can you repeat, Sujaya? What was the question? So
The question is that how do you basically, how do you kind of work around? Can you repeat the question here? I can read it out to you.
yes,
So,
please.
yeah, would be good to hear on some perspective on how does one actually manage to think about known unknown without crystal ball gazing.
Yes. So, Sujaya, this has been my experience. Of course, scenario planning does help, and in 60s and 70s, Shell developed that entire, practice of scenario planning, and they were able to use those scenarios to deal with the crisis. For
Yes.
example, 1973 crisis, where they were seventh largest company in the world in particular sector, they became second or third in the world just because of their ability to deal with scenario planning. And when I was working in my company, we were always working for scenarios, right? If this scenario happens, so look at that scenario and look at what we should be doing at a different milestones, right? So scenario planning is a very, very powerful way. But fundamentally, my experience has been, Sujaya, these days, uh, mostly companies know what is coming,
Hmm.
what is that future.
Hmm.
But a company survives and thrives and grows are those companies who act appropriately.
Hmm. Hmm.
See, action is missing because you use this word pause, right?
Hmm.
Pause, fear, courage. See, what is the reason why there is a, see, the tendency of any company or any institution or any group or a team is to be in the comfort, right?
Hmm.
I want to be in my comfort zone because
Yeah.
I'm meeting my deadlines, my deliverables are you know good, my quarterly results are good. That's the comfort.
Hmm.
And now, within that comfort, thinking about discomfort, being discomfort. So, fundamentally, what matters is that are the two things that matter. Number one, your ability to take appropriate actions so that when you know something, you take the right action, you survive and grow. The other aspect is that there is no fear because you have a structure, within your organization, which will run irrespective of what crisis it throws upon you. See, the framework that I'm bringing in, the structure that I'm bringing, it's nothing but preparation. As a
Yes.
company, as an individual, as a business, as a team, I'm whether as a business, are we prepared for the dealing? And
Yeah.
for that, there are three different layers at which that's readiness, activation, and the engine. The engine is the most important part, which will help you not to get fear, remain discomfort, and still, continue to grow, irrespective of what crisis it offers. It doesn't matter what kind of a pressures that you go through, uncertainty. So preparation matters, action matters,
Right.
and
Right.
that differentiates a company A to company B. Again, getting into the example is, let's look at Lego. Now, Lego, all of us, we grew up, right? One of the most favorite, toys
Yes.
for us and our children. So around 2000, they started losing their business. And in fact, millions of dollars were being lost almost every day or every week. Now, the question there was, the owners, they had certain sacred things within the organization. For example,
Yes.
creativity. So the culture is creativity. Now nobody will question creativity. Now because of that creativity, they started, creating movies, theme parks, and no one knew what is happening. And then comes this 35-year-old, outsider who looks at, my God, because of that creativity, we are losing this. Only thing is, now we need to act. And the owners, the family business owners of Lego, they gave that freedom to the 35-year-old leader, and he brings that change, right? So it's a preparation, it's action that matters, and sometimes we need to always question some of the things which we think nobody can question in the organization. Like there are certain companies that I have been part of, like integrity. So for us, I mean, when I worked in G, integrity is no uncompromisable, right? But are we looking at integrity across the business, or just because I believe integrity is my part of a value and culture, I don't want to question? And if you look at deeply about decline of a G, is because the businesses who tried, I don't know, but there is a whole literature that says that there was some kind of a financial manipulation, right? So these are some of the things that we need to self, reflect,
Yes.
and ensure. So you
Yeah.
have a preparation, you have an action, and also question,
Yeah. Yeah.
everything that organization thinks, or
Yeah.
sometimes we don't question. Yeah. So
Yeah.
these are some of the
Yeah.
things I would say makes a huge difference
Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
organization.
Good points on the questioning the unquestionable kind of thing.
Yes.
Because if you look at the kind of adaptive leadership that organizations like Netflix have demonstrated, it's come out of
Yes.
questioning practically everything.
Absolutely.
They're a logistics distribution business that has evolved to become a very sexy OTT platform. You know what I mean? So, which creates its own entertainment. So, I think for everyone, particularly in this generation, has dealt with Netflix only as an entertainment platform to know that they're actually a logistics and distribution business that actually evolved, through a lot of by reacting very often being proactive to be able to do certain things. So it's both in terms of how you arrive at it. Having said that, I think one of the things that we haven't spoken about is the power, especially in the question that got asked, is the power of being able to access data,
Yes.
because you did mention that a lot of organizations who got down to being able to do this or who proactively knew what change was coming is because they had access to information, they had access to data. And
Yes.
I cannot underline enough the importance of being able to access data in these times. And data is more easily accessible by individuals, and especially as many of us want to look at our own leadership in the context of change and complexity is that your data is going to be, we said, how do you weaponize change? You're actually going to weaponize the change if you have access to data. And data comes to those who know how to build relationships. Yeah, data comes to those who know how to network. Yeah, the data comes to people and unbelievable data can come to people who are smart enough to be able to access it and know how to act on it. So I think one of the parts that is absolutely important for us to be able to cover is how do I deal with unprecedented times and use that as an opportunity. And you're going to be able to do that well if you do build relationships, if you do have networks, if you do are able to access data. I can't
Yes.
underline data enough in this context, right? So I think with that, we'll try and move to the next discussion thread, if that's okay, Arvind.
Yes.
And this time I wanted to talk about, are we preparing to shape the disruption in our industry, or are we waiting to be reshaped by it? And I think it's kind of related to the question the gentleman just asked, which is, do we want to prepare to shape the disruption, or are we waiting to be reshaped by disruption? Like, which one should it be? I would believe it's both, but I'd still want to hear your perspective on it.
So let me start with a story or an experience, an incident. So it was 2009. I had just came to Pune to work, and I had an opportunity to meet now a very well-known Jensen Huang, CEO,
Hmm.
founder of NVIDIA.
Hmm.
Now, when it was a whole evening you are spending with him, with select, leaders from industry, and that evening and that experience has always been one of the most, profound learning for me as an
Hmm.
individual or as a professional. What he said during the conversation, which I captured as an email to my colleagues, is he said that as a NVIDIA, we are losing $200 million every quarter because of the architecture that they have built, that is CUDA, right? CUDA. And CUDA is an architecture which is nothing but a parallel processing architecture.
Hmm.
Now, here is a Jensen Huang who is a visionary, right? And visionary decided to take a bet on this particular product, CUDA, building that parallel processing CUDA architecture. And he knew that this is going to be a powerful architecture for anything that we do, whether it's a games or whether it's a complex simulations or possibly building machine learning capabilities and AI and so on. And this is, I'm talking about 2009. And now here is a point, right? If, you know, a company has invested and brought this product into the market, and you're losing $200 million every quarter. And of course, within the company, I'm sure the analyst or or even for me, I felt, let's be realistic. Why are you losing $200 million? But Jensen Huang or NVIDIA's whole philosophy is invest and create new, futuristic products that will help industries. From 2009, now let's come to 2025-26. It touched $5 trillion economy, a $5 trillion market cap. It's a company which is one of the most valued company ever in the history of the world, right? $5 trillion company. And what made that $5 trillion economy is that bet. That bet at
Hmm.
that time it was losing, but he had that conviction
Hmm.
that this is going to be of a great value
Hmm.
for anything that happens in the future, because I have the data. I know
Hmm.
where the trends are. I know what kind of a products and solutions are going to come, what kind of an internet capability that is going to be built, what kind of an AI and machine learning capabilities that are being developed. And that bet for a normal person or a company in general would have been a disaster, or they would have been just kept it aside, at that time. But he continued to invest, and today he's this. And that's what is so important for companies that's what you said, right? The power of data and looking at the future, knowing that future, and having that conviction, and betting on right things that would really ensure that you are not going to get disrupted, but you will ensure that you will disrupt a lot of other industries.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's, I think, something that as an organization we should be able to, and we can look at many other examples like this, to answer such, and many companies, they don't do that, right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah. So
therefore
I think
they
the point
lose.
you're making, Arvind, is that, are you reacting to disruption and then struggling to be
Yes.
able to react? Or,
Or
are you taking the lead, at least in some areas, to be able
yes,
to lead the disruption? You know what I mean? You enable the
yes,
disruption. And that's what we're
yes,
saying, that weaponize the change, which is
yes,
they are environments, the turbulent airs that will allow you to do both. And maybe oftentimes playing that catch-up game is far more difficult than disrupting the market yourself.
yes,
Yeah, but requires data, requires the courage and the grit of a visionary. Yeah, and I'm saying who's taking some right bets as they're going along, and I'm sure he's worked
yes.
with a lot of information and data that guided him to be able to get to a point. Having said that, do you follow through on a disruption, or do you create a disruption yourself? And I think it's an and also answer, like most other things in this economy, is that sometimes you're going to play the catch up and sometimes you're going to create the standard, but you should be able to do both. And so, with
Absolutely.
that,
That's how
yeah,
this S curves that we see, right? You invent or innovate, and it slowly starts growing and it saturates. You have to prepare before it gets saturated, the next S curve.
yes,
Otherwise, you will get disrupted. And therefore, as an organization, it's extremely important that when we bet on certain things, it's a portfolio game, right? I'm trying to do so. There are generally three categories. Something that exists today, the products that I have, how can I make the better product, better offering, better service? The second is what can I do in adjacent to my product? And third is something entirely different. Sometimes we call it blue ocean or something, which can help not only disrupt something within a company, but entire industry gets disrupted. Or so see, that's the portfolio game that we need to play. Unfortunately, companies invest or mostly focused on the first part, right? I'm only focused on my existing offering. I'm not looking at what can, and I will also tell you one example. Again, this is a real examples that can actually help us decode or dissect further. So we were working for a, say, Fortune 100 European company. Now as a chairman, we were working for a chairman. Now look at how chairman is thinking. So we prepared a report about the competition of all the competitors of that large company, other large companies, right? And
mm,
it was such a detailed report that, competitor A is doing this, competitor B is doing this, and this is your strength, this is, what they are doing. After looking at this report, what the chairman said, I'm not interested to know what my competitors are doing, but I'm interested to know what is that one small company, perhaps in Bangalore or somewhere in the world, is developing a product or a solution or a technology that can disrupt my
mm,
business and my industry.
mm,
So,
mm.
see, this is the shift that is happening. It's not about my competition and I
Yeah,
compete with my competitors.
yeah,
Today, competition can come from any place in the world, and then it changes the entire business dynamics. So these are some
yes,
of the
yeah,
examples I thought I should
yeah,
share,
yeah, yeah. No, they're very
to
useful.
explain.
They're very, very useful and meaningful to bring this alive. So I'm going to move this into a conversation around what does it take to lead when the future won't stand still? Yeah, it's a leadership question. What does it take to lead in this kind of an environment? So I'm going to let you go first. This is very much up my alley, so I'll try and add to that. But absolutely over to you on this world that we're describing, which is how do you, in a world where you use and leverage disruption, how what kind of leadership does that really require?
See, when I started decoding companies who have been able to, lead any crisis, any disruption successfully, uh, fundamentally, I call this as a command. It's not a hierarchy, or it is not about control. It's about how quickly you can take a decision, and you have created that structure within the organization. And fundamentally, there are two things that are very, very important for leaders to have. There are three dimensions, but these three dimensions are: the first is, as a leader, I should create a culture within my organization so that anyone within my organization, it doesn't matter at what level, is able to give me, or I listen to them or value their inputs. Because I have seen in my own experiences that the person who is closest to the problem or closest to the customer knows far, far better than the senior leaders. So that's, as a leader, whether I have those systems and processes in place so that I am able to, gather that intelligence from my team, irrespective of what level that person sits in, and that's invaluable thing that exists. The second thing is that today it is not just what, as an organization, we know. Fundamental challenge that exists in the companies today, and which is very dangerous, is we know it all, right? We know this, and
Mm,
that's very,
mm.
very, this is the enemy of any organization,
Oh yeah.
saying that, we know it, we know all, and this thing. So therefore, you create, as a leader, an architecture where you are able to get the intelligence from the external world. And I've seen this, how chairmen of the companies, business leaders, manage to get that intelligence. It's a part of your structure, it's a part of your system. So now I'm trying to get, all that intelligence, that knowledge, that trends and signals from my external world. And then now, as a leader, first thing you need to, and which is very difficult, therefore I always say agility and adaptability is a muscle which can be trained. But the most important is, as a leader, am I continuously unlearning? And unlearning requires surrendering, right?
Hmm.
Your identity is at your question, you're questioning your own identity.
Hmm.
And as a leader, if you build that capability of unlearning all the time, and which is the hardest, and which basically determines what happens to the company in a given situation or given crisis, this thing. And I would say that if, as a leader, you start with unlearning, allow and question. Anybody can question and get
Hmm.
the intelligence from this thing, and also remain connected to the external world so that you continuously get intelligence. And then, as an organization, as a leader, you are able to navigate any kind of a challenge. You can
Hmm.
anticipate, you are prepared, and you can deal with those challenges, because those tools and practices exist, right? Because I can bring in agility, I can bring in, this thing. And therefore, one component that exists in my framework is having a dedicated team which is directly working with the CEO, because that team can take, it's something like having a war room when the crisis
Hmm.
happens.
Hmm.
So the people who are closest to the people, or
With the problem.
or a
Yeah.
situation, they with the problem, they take the decision. Not as a leader, you are sitting in a corner office and taking a decision.
Hmm.
I think these are some of the elements, if you can bring into leadership, and it's a continuously, you're ensuring that this is what you are working on. You are allowing and bringing those elements into the leadership. Uh,
Yes.
Things will succeed. That's my
Yes.
experience.
Right, right. So, Arvind, I think you have a great, very sort of, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive kind of list, right? So I'm just going to augment some of the things that you were already
Yes.
saying, right? So, to me, I think that, strategic astuteness, right, and courage. So strategic astuteness and courage is a very important sort of combination, which is that I'm not just astute about what's happening and reading the environment and how it is that I interpret the change, but I also have courage to be able to deal with this and to respond to it, and to inspire other people to be able to do what needs to get done, and they can see the courage. You know what I mean? I'm not astounded. I'm not taken aback. I'm not bewildered. I haven't lost confidence. There's none of any of that, right? I mean, that I'm able to basically continuously demonstrate courage even in the face of adversity or change, right? I'm going to combine that with the savviness on technology. So I think the ability to read and the ability to respond currently in the current environment, particularly, has got so much to do with using technology as a disruptor or responding to technology as a disruptor. So, the growth mindset that we're talking about is extremely important to say. It's all right, like you say, you're talking about, how can you be the learn it all rather than the know it all? And that is like literally sitting at number one for me, which is you have the ability to unlearn and relearn, or to
Yes.
also know that there are things I really don't know and I really need to go out there and understand them. So currently, to do with the AI adoption, particularly within organizations, there is just so much of board FOMO, in terms of really wanting people. They have deadlines to be able to deliver on use cases. There's just all kind of stress around this. And what I find with so many organizations is that this pressure to want to deliver on this because the board or whoever else wants to look good is basically resulting in conflict, resulting in good talent leaving the organization, resulting in blood on the floor in terms of relationships which have gotten into a mess. There's also one instance which happened in the month of March, which is where everyone in the team, this was a procurement team that was working on, AI integration, and practically everyone resigned. And I think that you don't want that. You don't need that. You know what I mean? You need to be able to be savvy around the change you're committing to. So I think this astuteness and maturity, the kind of gravitas we need to bring to how we're responding to change is just so important. um, the information access that you spoke about, I cannot underline enough. I think this ability to be able to get access to information, and it comes from the learning orientation, and that's why you want to
Yes.
access the right information, so that you're able to make astute decisions, so that you're able to solve for the problems in a more permanent kind of manner, rather than have to constantly figure things and do it in an iterative manner because you didn't have information before. I think all of that just causes so much of change fatigue within organizations when people don't know what it is that they're trying to change. Cannot underline enough the need to be a high EQ leader, and this is a buildable muscle. So I'm literally inviting everyone to do it, not just because we do work in the space, but because it's important for you and for your organizations to have high EQ leaders who believe in being able to build human connections, who value human side of enterprise genuinely, don't pretend to do it, but they genuinely value people, they value human connection. They want to be able to win by building a differentiated culture. What you accrue when you're interested in that is that you actually accrue the ability to be able to build rapport and earn trust very quickly. And the key word being quickly. You don't have to wait for a long time to earn the trust. You can earn trust quickly, and that is invaluable for a leader. I also want to talk about this know-it-all piece that you were referring to, you know what I mean, which is basically fixed mindsets, and you don't want
Yes.
to, and there's arrogance that comes to replace it in terms of poo-pooing or dismissing of something that is change and something that you don't know, you're not so great at. And I think that can be the biggest barrier to being able to be an organization that knows how to value and leverage a disruption. You know what I mean? So this is, and it's in the leadership behavioral space. You know what I mean? So it's got less to know with whether you are strategically or even conceptually or technologically savvy. It's got to do with the behavior, which is significantly in the way of succeeding. I want to talk about vulnerability, as an organization. And I think that is so invaluable. You know what I mean? To basically admit we don't know, or we don't know enough, or we're not very good at this, or we didn't do well with this, or I think that we could have done so much better if we had access to this. So, all the lessons learned kind of in orientation constantly within the organization without fear of being judged or fear of any form of punishment or career consequence. It's just so important to build these cultures of vulnerability. They're going to make workplaces far more bearable as compared to talent and a whole lot of other people referring to the workplace as toxic. So when we're talking about vulnerability, right, vulnerability is a reaction to an empathetic work environment. And it's not destructive empathy. It's not empathy for failure. It's empathy for understanding how it is that you can be in a situation that is difficult where you need help. And so this whole piece on empathy and compassion are not soft words in the 21st century. I think they're basically what define great leadership. I also want to talk about the whole piece on being able to build momentums for ideas. And I think you called that out very well, which is to say that people who are closest to a problem or closest to a situation actually know best about that situation. So valuing the gemba is so important. I mean, valuing where work gets done is so important. And therefore, leaving the crown behind and instead be getting down into the trenches will sometimes actually help accelerate problem solving. So the better you know the people down the line where actually things get done, the front line, the market is going to actually help you accelerate problem solving within the organization significantly. And last but not the least, I want to make a additional mention of the fact that increasingly, the with the generational divide, the sort of the mindset and the behaviors of new generations is going to require a very high level of a sort of a high sense of inclusion and high tolerance for diversity. Yeah, and to be able to start valuing how new generations solve problems or how new generations think or how new generations can respond to a particular kind of leadership, the compassion that you need to deal with people who are different than ourselves. I think that's going to hold organizations in great stead in terms of being able to attract the right talent. Right, there are a lot of presumptions on, for instance, the work ethic of young people. You know what I mean? And I have only 100 stories of people who are quite the opposite of that. So the idea is to be able to create more enabling environments for these people. So I think with that, we're left with just 3 minutes, Arvind, and I'm going to just
Yes.
ask you some final words on. We talked about how do you leverage disruption as an advantage, right, as a competitive advantage. And my last question was around culture. So I do want you to talk a bit about how you believe organizations are readier to be able to better prepared to be able to do this if they do have a culture that is differentiated. So I let you have the last word on this before we close this out. How can culture as a differentiator help organizations to be able to convert adversity into an advantage?
See, what differentiates a company with another company is a culture, right? Again, we can go back because I like to illustrate with an example.
Sure.
So now the culture that existed in Fujifilm versus the culture that existed in Kodak,
Hmm.
both, in fact, Kodak discovered or invented digital. They invested billions of dollars
Hmm.
in that technology. In fact, for some time they were leaders. And
Hmm.
here was a Fujifilm. They realized that you know digital is coming, and they were seeing the trend, but film was still selling, or still it
Hmm.
was a very profitable business. Now it's ability of a company or the culture of a company at what time you are able to see the future, because I'm talking in the context of disruption, in the context of
Yeah.
crisis, in the context of chaos or uncertainty. Now the culture, Komori as a leader, if we can see that he said, if I need to make sure that Fujifilm exists and continues to grow, I need to have a culture where I would not only ask the question or question the existing profitable product. I start slowly dismantling, start looking at auditing what is it that one can do based on the body of knowledge that exists within the company. What is it that, the talent, the skills that we have, and what kind of a new products and new solutions one can bring in or bring into the market. And that's where that culture that dismantled the existing profitable business because they knew what is coming in. The second part is now looking at what potential opportunities that exist based on the talent, the skill, the body of knowledge, and they discovered that they have the capability to get into the skin products, cosmetic products, and many other products, and they started building when the company was needed. So that ability to constantly reimagine and reinvent is something which is extremely important. And for reimagining and reinventing, we need to fundamentally ask a very important question within the organization that, say, for example, those who are listening here, that say Monday morning, you can go back and ask this very fundamental question that I have this offering, this product, which is doing so well. And ask this very fundamental question, what if this product gets disrupted or becomes irrelevant in, say, 12 months from now? Are we prepared as an organization? Do we have a plan? If we don't have, what could be that? And that's, is a very, very important thing that one can do and ensure that you are constantly reinventing or constantly reimagining as an organization. And particularly when good times are there. Of course, when crisis exists, you need to really act. And the dealing with crisis depends upon the preparation that you have built in, and culture of preparation, that is at the beginning and at the end has to be supportive to bring that change, to bring that possibility, create that opportunity, and survive and grow. That's what I feel, that culture will play a very, very important role. Beginning of the crisis, or good times, or bad times, or uncertain times.
So. Right. Thank you, Aravind. It's been such a pleasure talking to you here today. I think we picked a fairly complex topic in terms of how does one really use disruption or change as a competitive advantage. And I'm hoping that we're leaving people to imagine that stress and burnout and negative emotion need not be the only reactions to change and chaos. That actually using that chaos as a competitive advantage is what we want to plant as an important thought for you, so that you're able to deal with what is going to be inevitably regular, which is there's no one escaping this. And so the unprecedented times that we're talking about persist, and we're going to see more and more color around it. And, the more we approach it as wanting to get the better of it, and to be able to use the adversity, to use the crisis, and to be able to emerge even stronger and better, and use that to become competitively stronger, is the invitation from this conversation. So I'm hoping that we've left you a little more inspired than when you joined us 1 hour ago. And thank you, Aravind, for enabling that and enabling this conversation here today. So good luck, everyone. Stay in touch and watch out for more conversations. We have a book review the next time, which is talking points for the month of August. So I'm going to invite you to be able to join us the next time. This is Talking Points with the very iconic Anil Sachdeva, who's the founder and chairman of the School of Inspired Leadership. And he's written, rightly so, written a book on the inspired leader. And we're going to try and talk to him about this book, which just released a couple of days ago. So in conversation with the author of The Inspired Leader. So watch the space for more, and we're looking forward to you joining us for upcoming Talking Points conversations. So everyone, thank you for joining in today, and I hope, like I said, we've left you more inspired. All the best, everyone, and take care until we meet again on the next Talking Points. Yeah, saying goodbye. Yeah, take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks.
Goodbye.